I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday and we are going to continue our off-season discussion. We're going to be looking at the running back class of 2021. Just completed their third season, looking at where they stand in Dynasty Value now. A couple of news items, but Dennis, it was the first full weekend without football for the year. I spent that doing a little luggage shopping and then going to a nice restaurant with my wife. How did you pass what I like to call the first depression weekend of the year?
So it was my year for Valentine's Day planning. And just to be completely transparent, I'm awful at stuff like that. But I totally crushed it this year. So we didn't do anything Wednesday. Now, my wife will swear up and down I didn't tell her we weren't doing anything on Valentine's Day. But I did. I told her I was planning it for Saturday because why rush home from work and try to squeeze something in? And I found this really cool thing called Don't Tell Comedy. You can go on social media and find them, Don't Tell Comedy. Basically, it's like a comedy pop-up. Like where we were at was literally an eyeglass place. It was Columbus Vision Works or Columbus Eye Works.
Did you also get just a quick vision check before you went in?
No, because they don't take my insurance. But they literally put about 50 or so chairs in a U around a microphone stand. They have a traveling sign, Don't Tell Comedy sign, and they had about 6 comedians. It was funny. They were hilarious. We sat in the front row, so we had interaction with about 5 of the comedians. You know, the one guy, his philosophy was guys with kids have big heads. And he looks at me and goes, "Do you have kids, sir?" And I'm like, "Yes, 2. And he's like, "Oh, that tracks." And then he's like, "Just kidding. You don't have a big head." And my wife is like, "Oh, yes, he does." It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw Jerry Seinfeld was playing in Colorado Springs. I looked and the cheapest ticket was $275. So I've been taking Lindsay through the sitcom Seinfeld, the classic one. So right. I just found one of his stand-up specials on Netflix. And I was like, look, here you go. We can watch. Well, before we get to the running backs, there are a couple of pieces of news. The first, it is the kind of the slower season, but the Ravens re-signed Nelson Aguilar just before his contract would have expired. He's back at least on a 1-year deal. Does that move the needle for you much at all?
Somebody's got to run wind sprints there. I mean,
it's hard to figure out what they want to do at receiver, man.
Well, and then Zay Flowers is looking at some potential legal trouble.
They did say today they were suspending that it looked like the investigation was being suspended with no charges yet. See how that, still plenty of time for that to come around, but that's not great news for the Ravens.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I saw a news bit here. Where was it? It was a John Harbaugh thing. I want to see who reported it. Jeremy Fowler reported that the Ravens, some personnel people inside the league believe the Ravens will target a running back with pedigree in free agency.
Which would make sense because, you know, when we get to the class of I guess it must be 22 is where Dobbins was, or he might be.
I think no. I
20.
think he may be going into his 4th year because we're looking at 3rd-year running backs today.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, he's not at a.
Can't stay healthy. I mean, you got what Josh Jacobs and
Oh yeah, Dobbins is a free agent, so he's completed 4 years. So he was class of. I was right. He was class of 20. I mean, I think they waited for him for a long time to try to cement that. It just didn't work out. And I liked the pop they got from Keaton Mitchell, but he's coming back off injury, and I don't know that he's like a full-time guy. So I think they needed more than the Gus Bus and the dregs of Dalvin Cook.
yeah. I mean, and we got Jacobs, we got Saquon Barkley, who's likely to be out there. I don't think either one of them get franchise tagged a second time.
I don't think Pollard will get a franchise tag either.
No, but I don't think he's pedigreed either.
The other kind of piece of news, we had a couple of retirements. Mike Davis, veteran running back, hung up on his 31st birthday. And the other one that has retired that came up today is Matthew Slater, the great special teams player for the Patriots, a 10-time Pro Bowler. What will you miss about those guys?
Well, Davis was the original thigh guy. So,
and he had a couple of seasons where he came in as a replacement that, saved your bacon if you were a 0 RB dude.
Mike Davis gives me hope for a couple guys on this list we're going to talk about later. So, because he just, he flashed a little bit here and there, never did anything consistent. And then when he was like 26, 27, he had a couple good years. No, I think, Davis didn't retire. Teams told him they didn't want him. So, that's, so okay. So you announced your retirement.
I mean, 8 years though, for that kind of a journeyman player who was never kind of a star or first thought, but there were some weeks where I was grateful he was in my lineup.
Yeah. Slater, he didn't do, he wasn't much for fantasy. I think if they're going to put special teamers in the Hall of Fame, Slater's certainly a guy that's going to make it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're not going to put him in first ballot, but he was a guy that you could count on. Make sure your special teams, everybody was where they were supposed to be, doing what they were supposed to be doing. No, he wasn't a return guy. That wasn't his thing. He was a special teams captain. He kept that unit in line. Just a great all-around player. Didn't they list him as a wide receiver or safety?
Yeah, wide receiver.
What they listed him as. He wasn't going to play really at any position.
I did end up having to play a couple of snaps at receiver a few times, which tells you about the Patriots.
So there's another little news story here that I want to hear your thoughts on. Jeremy Fowler is also reporting that virtually no one around the league expects Russell to be back in Denver. Do you think is that accurate? Is he gone?
I mean, that's been the thought since the season.
How bad is that going to hit their draft their capital salary?
It's an $85 million hit. Matthew Slater had 2 career carries for 11 yards and 1 career reception for 46 yards. Had to have been a special teams trick play, I think.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see what happens with Russell, whether they can trade him and get somebody to eat it or not. But it would be that's the whole thing. I think it would be like they said, like an $85 million.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where the draft pick and the amount of salary the team acquiring him, it's like a sliding scale. So as the draft pick gets higher, the team that's acquiring him is going to eat more salary cap.
Yeah, dead cap $85 million. I just looked. That's No, I don't really.
What do you think? Matt Bowen is saying Josh Jacobs would be a good fit for the Cowboys.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people mocking or saying Saquon's going to go to the Cowboys. I think I would like that better, but either I would wager the other potential for Dallas is Derrick Henry, because it depends on what they're looking for, but it seems like they certainly want some kind of a battering ram.
So they're going to pair him with Rico Dowdle?
Who knows? Dallas doesn't have a lot of cap.
Right.
Well, let's look at a group of other running backs who are about to go into their fourth year, just completed 3 years, and see where we're sitting. And when I was putting guys on this list, I feel like a lot of them, we've gone through some peaks and valleys already with their value, which is kind of interesting, but we'll go in draft order. We'll start with Najee Harris. Harris was the first back taken, went to Pittsburgh. He has 3,269 yards and 22 touchdowns in 3 seasons. He has had over 1,000 yards every year, and he has had at least 7 rushing touchdowns every year. He also has 144 receptions for 866 yards, but his best season by far was as a rookie when he caught 74 passes. He's had 41 and then 29. Actually had 1 more yard rushing and 1 more rushing touchdown on fewer carries in 23 over 22. Really closed strong. I thought he was a player that benefited from the change at offensive coordinator when Matt Canada left. But this was also probably his rockiest year and most roller coaster if you're a fantasy owner, because he, for a time, technically lost his starting job to Jaylen Warren. Going into year 4, he gets Arthur Smith, which could be good, could be bad. We know he likes to run, but we know he doesn't necessarily like to run with one guy. The one I feel most bullish for right now is Calvin Austin, who, probably get a lot of backfield around, like the Cordero Patterson work. But what are you feeling for Najee Harris? When he went, he was pretty much taken 101 in rookie drafts. A lot of people taking him, hoping for a good solid RB1. He finished as RB27 last year, so not quite. And I did your 17 weeks for you. PPR RB27, so not quite at an RB2 level last year.
Yeah, so his first year he was RB3, and that was the Ben Roethlisberger's final season, dumping it off. He couldn't throw up more than 7 yards. So he had 74 receptions. He's had 70 receptions in the last 2 years combined. Now, to me, I feel like Najee has the build and the ability to maybe not catch 70 balls, but I think he can be productive and get back up near that 1,200 yards and catch 50 balls. The question looms that Jaylen Warren is there, and while Warren did not have a great relative athletic score, only a 4.9. Let's see, what did his 40? He only ran a 4.55 40. Najee didn't do a lot of testing coming in because I think he was coming off an injury in college. So I wanted to compare him to see heads up, because at his size, 6'1", 230, I think Najee's athleticism is better than Jaylen Warren's, according to the Kent Lee Platt's relative athletic score. But because he didn't test coming into the league, you can't really compare him head to head. I think Najee is going to get the ball. I think we're going to look. It's one of those things where they're probably not looking at Najee past this year. They're not going to give him a.
So you don't think he'll get a 5th-year option then?
I don't think so. I just don't think it makes good sense. He's went from RB3 to RB14 to RB27. He's kind of turned into a little bit more of a guy you want if you're playing in a standard league. And I know there are a few standard leagues out there. Actually, I roster him in my standard league that I'm in. And I got offered Jake Ferguson and Jerry Jeudy for him. and a standard tight end premium.
God.
So I countered with a 25 second for Najee and got rejected, or 25 first, excuse me, which is like a 24 second. So I didn't think it was too far out of the value. And with Arthur Smith going back, I feel like Smith is going to not be afraid to run Najee. And, we're not going to – I don't think anybody's going to mistake Jaylen Warren for Bijan Robinson. Well, you might mistake Najee for Tyler Algier, but I think Najee is still a decent piece to roster as your RB2 or even RB3. He's going to be one of those guys I think you maybe wait until mid-season, and if things play out, then you go get him for your title run as your RB2 or 3. He's one of the guys that if this was 20 years ago, he would be getting 275, 300 carries a season, and there would be no question about it. But we're not in that era anymore, and so they're looking for this other type of offense. I do think that Arthur Smith plays that more smash mouth conservative game. So it'll be interesting to see if he finishes as an RB2 this year. I think I could see him being back in the RB2 mix. I don't know if he'll be as high as RB14, but I could see him RB16 or RB18.
So I think what benefits him is there's a lot of running back movement that's going to happen, and it's not a great draft class, because my first thought would be, I'd feel better if I was counting on him as my RB3, but I do think there's potential for him to get into the lower half RB2, which isn't to say that's what you were hoping for when you took him a couple of years ago. It's definitely been a little bit of a bummer. He did get 255 carries last year. I wouldn't think that his workload gets too far diminished. Arthur Smith likes to run. I think still the big questions for Pittsburgh don't even necessarily have to do with him. Are they going to work on improving the offensive line? Because they made some strides last year, I guess, but it's still not spectacular. And what are they going to do at quarterback? Because I do think that's, even when you got a guy that had like a modicum of composure and presence at quarterback, which was Mason Rudolph at the end, you saw a better game from Najee Harris. I think some of those, especially those Matt Canada, Kenny Pickett games, were tough to watch.
They were.
The next guy up was the next guy taken in the draft, the only other first-round pick, and that was Travis Etienne. He went at the bottom of the first round, but did not play his rookie season after getting an injury. So he only has 2 years worth of stats, has 2,133 yards in those 2 years, has over 1,000 yards in both seasons, but dropped from 1,125 in 2022 to 1,008 in 2023, despite 47 more carries. So make of that what you will. Did jump up in touchdowns with 11, also jumped up in receptions, had 58 receptions for 476 yards. He finished as RB2 on the season, but I think, Dennis, you and I commented even during the season, he was incredibly strong, it seemed like, in the beginning. And it was a little more hit and miss, not just for him, but for Jacksonville in general, kind of as they were going down. I still think he has low-end RB1 potential because they seem to want to use him as a workhorse in Jacksonville, and I still think Jacksonville has a decent offense. And again, the landscape of running backs is not incredible. But how are you feeling about Travis Etienne?
So he feels like a classic hashtag 2 to 3 year window guy. And, this is going to be year 3 technically because he was out his first year. So he did have a great first half of the season, and then as the team got worse, so did he. The second half, he wasn't productive for fantasy. He caught more passes, but I think coming out there was some thought that he was a much better receiver than he actually is. He's a little more of a dump off receiver than he is a route running receiver. So, I mean, they don't have much behind him. Tank Bigsby had as bad a rookie year, I think, as a running. It seemed like every time Tank Bigsby touched the ball, it just bounced out of his hands into a defender's hands. I felt for the guy. They brought somebody else in and somebody got elevated to the RB2 over Bigsby, a Mike Davis type of guy that I can't remember.
They have Jermichael Hasty.
Yeah, I think it was him. But I think ETN is still going to be the guy there. I don't think he's going to there's no threat to his position. So I think you can comfortably go, and if you're contending, I think he's a hold. I'm not afraid to hold on to him. If I'm not contending, then I'm going to wait until the season starts, let him get a little run, or if I can find somebody that is contending that feels like, I can get full retail price for him, I'd be willing to move him.
So I'm looking at Jacksonville's backfield, and the other guy we were thinking of was Dearness Johnson. Yeah. But Bigsby, season long, 50 carries, 132 yards. Johnson, 41 carries, 108 yards. Not a ton of and they only had 3 true running backs carry the ball. Jamal Agnew is a wide receiver. Yeah, they only have 3 true running backs carry the ball. So ATN was pretty much the guy. I'm kind of with you. So do you think they'll pick up his 5th-year option because he's the other one that has?
No, I don't think it just doesn't make sense in this climate. I think the fact that they were drafted in the first round was a bit of a shock anyways. So, yeah. I like where he's at, but
going forward, do you feel better about? I mean, I think we both think ATN may end up having a better 2024 than Najee Harris. But if you were looking at these two guys, who would you rather have right now in Dynasty?
So Harris is my kind of guy, but I think I think I probably want ETN,
which I think I feel the same way, and that feels like a big reversal from when they first got drafted. It's not even almost just the player; it's the situation. Who would have thought Jacksonville would be a better situation than the potential roving dumpster fire of Pittsburgh? Because I still think there's a chance if the Steelers don't have a good year, based on kind of the comments that they'll make some kind of coaching change and maybe some wholesale changes next off season.
I think Tomlin's there as long as he wants to be there.
I don't know. It's possible, but their owner has made some comments that make you think he's not content with just being above 500 anymore. The toughest one for me on this entire list is our next guy, who is the 3rd running back off the board, and that was Javonte Williams, who went to the Denver Broncos. Nobody was more hyped for Javonte Williams than me. I'd say the last 2 off seasons we had talked about him as being a top 12 option in Dynasty. We just don't see it on the field. I was excited potentially about his role in a new offense, but while he had a career high in carries at 217, he only got 774 yards and 3 touchdowns, couldn't even crack 4 yards a carry, down at 3.6. Caught 47 passes, but wasn't always on the field. Peyton used a mixture of 3 running backs, no indication they'll do anything but be in a committee. Williams finishing as RB31 last year, and that feels about right to me. You maybe could talk me into low end RB2 value, but I think I feel better now if he's my RB3, which was a real bummer from where I took him. How are you feeling about Williams?
So I'm torn because, like, I can see Javonte Williams in an Alvin Kamara role. Give him 200 carries and 80 or 90 targets, and he's going to be productive for you. I think that Peyton is going to use some other guys. I think he needs to make sure they have that, Mark Ingram, Jamal Williams, that battering ram kind of guy there, so that Javonte Williams doesn't have to be that guy. Williams is stocky, he's sturdy, but he's 5'9", 215 pounds or something. And I like the ability, and it's a situation where they're looking at rebuilding the team. So they got Jaleel McLaughlin, and who was the other guy? Samaje Perine.
They're both under contract.
And so none of the backs are going anywhere. McLaughlin, getting rid of him doesn't save you any cap space.
There has been some talk about, some people have floated the idea of releasing Perine to save money. I don't know. I honestly, there's time to change my mind, but I think we might have to write Denver off in general in 2024. I think they're going to screw themselves.
Yeah, I think they're in a cap situation with getting rid of Russell Wilson, that there's not really going to be any option but for them to kind of take it on the chin salary cap wise. So that means they're going to need to use the guys that they have in-house. And Javonte Williams is the best of those guys. He was coming off the injury last year. So what week do you think he finally got back to full health and full confidence?
Javonte Williams, I think he looked like he was ready to go week 1. I don't think his running or anything changed. I just don't think it's a great system. I actually wish Denver had fired their coach. I'm not even kidding. I don't think he deserves to be an NFL coach.
Is he at the Mike Holmgren in Cleveland stage?
I think he's at the Josh McDaniels stage for me.
Well, McDaniels, I think, tries. He's just a bad coach. Holmgren came to Cleveland and was just stealing money, in my opinion.
I don't know. I think the entire thing is bad. I would have canned the general manager too. But since they're unwilling to make any of those changes and they're about to be completely screwed, I just don't. Nothing about how that offense looked was good, and they will have no money to fix it. And I don't really trust the people that they have making scouting and drafting decisions to make any improvements either. I would say, in general, it was pretty woeful.
So, are you looking at Jarrett Stidham as your starting quarterback next year?
Who knows what they're going to do? So
Williams was RB15 his rookie year. Do you think he can get back to that?
I don't know. Not in the current.
Just because they don't have anything else.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He got more. He got more carries than he did as a rookie, but just much less production. They were really pitiful in the red zone. Like I said, you could maybe talk me into him being low end RB2, but I'd probably feel better if he was an RB3 for me.
Yeah.
Because that's about where he is. I think he'll still be there and he'll still have a role and you'll still put him into your flex, but
I agree.
Don't have super high hopes.
The next one's fun.
Yep. So next up in the draft order is Trey Sermon, who has played for 3 teams in 3 years. Was feeling like we were verging really into bust territory. Couldn't make it with San Francisco, which was a grim sign. Didn't even really get on the field for the Eagles in 22. But we did see some signs of life down the stretch in 23 when he got 35 carries for 160 yards. I thought he looked good at times when he filled in when almost everybody was injured for the Colts. How are you feeling about Trey Sermon? Any reason to roster him?
So with those 35 carries, he averaged 4.6 yards a carry. He didn't punch it in the end zone. Didn't get targeted to speak of. Only had 6 targets. He had some good, decent seasons in college. He put up some decent tape. So he's one of the guys on this list that makes me go, maybe he could Mike Davis it, and just takes him a few years to learn how to be a pro, and he gets a little better each year. I mean, he's 6'1", 230. He's got good size and decent speed, can catch the ball. It just hasn't clicked for him at the NFL level. He was probably overdrafted by the 49ers. Because they took him in the 3rd round or 4th round?
Third round.
Yeah, he probably should have been a 5th or 6th round draft pick.
Their 6th round draft pick is still with the team.
Okay. He is. So, he hasn't worked his way into a ton of opportunity. In Indianapolis, he was the last man standing, essentially. I think there's some athletic ability there. I'm not going out and trying to acquire him. If I have rebuilding teams and I'm looking for that, just give me a piece that is a lottery ticket. I may ask for him to be a throw-in, but he's not somebody I'm chasing. If I've got him on a roster, he's holding down that last spot or 2 on the roster, and if I gotta pick up a free agent or something at another position, or a running back that maybe is flashing a little bit more ability, I'm not tied to him.
Yeah, I think I'm probably not rostering Trey Sermon, but maybe he'll work himself into relevance. You never know. Next up, we have Michael Carter, who went in the top of the 4th round to the New York Jets. Had a fantastic rookie year, rushing for 639 yards, 4 touchdowns, had caught 36 passes. Was a pretty solid contributor even during his 2nd year. They had taken Breece Hall. Hall got injured, ended up rushing for 402 yards, 3 more touchdowns, caught 41 passes, got 77 passes in the first couple of years there with New York for a little more than 600 yards. But 2023 wasn't great. The Jets were struggling. He ended up being released midseason, hooked on with Arizona, 6 games there, had 22 carries for 149 yards, only caught 9 passes for 33 and a touchdown, but could be in the mix in a backfield that certainly is – nicest way to say is probably in flux. Connor, a free agent. They have Omari DeMarcado. They don't have a lot in that backfield, so maybe there's an opportunity. Are you at all enticed to hang on to Michael Carter?
I think Carter is a hold, just because until it looks like he's not going to get opportunity, it's DeMarcado and Carter out there. And we saw in Philadelphia, where Gannon came from, they used a bunch of running backs. So if Connor doesn't come back, they're going to add a veteran to the mix somewhere, or a rookie. It looks more and more like they're probably going to add Marvin Harrison to that team to go along with, Hollywood Brown and Greg Dortch. And
Hollywood Brown's a free agent too.
Is he? Okay, well, that's good.
Not for him. I don't know what his incredible value will be on the open market.
So if they've got Trey McBride, who looks like a bona fide stud, Kyler Murray is gonna, do what Kyler Murray does. He's gonna run around with those little short steps and eventually run or throw it downfield. I think Marvin Harrison. It wouldn't surprise me a bit if, let's say, somebody goes off the reservation and drafts Marvin Harrison in the top 3. I wouldn't be surprised to see Arizona draft Malik Neighbors. He had a phenomenal season at LSU. That being said, I think Michael Carter is a guy that you could probably flex him this next season. I think he's going to earn some opportunity.
So for the Cardinals, wide receivers they have under contract currently: Zach Pascal, Rondale Moore, Michael Wilson, Dan Chisna, Jeff Smith, Andre Bocelli, Daniel Arias, and Caden Davis. But I was wrong at running back. Currently under contract, James Conner has one more year. Michael Carter, Tony Jones, and Amari DiMarcado. So Carter, if I had space like at the end of a roster, I might hang on to him because I think there's potential there. And, he could serve a lot of different roles. And we know James Conner doesn't always stay healthy all season. But I don't know if I have a better option, I'm not afraid to put him on waivers. I'm not sure he's going to be rostered in all leagues.
Yeah. I can see Connor and Carter forming a, your traditional 2-down back, 3rd-down back tandem.
Yeah, which, that's what we thought he was going to be for the Jets. Just something massively fell apart for the Jets. I don't know if it was attitudes or what. Next up on the list, Ramondre Stevenson, who is probably you would think of as one of the better running backs in the class, but went in the 4th round, 120 overall, had a decent rookie year, but really exploded in year 2, ran for 1,040 yards and 5 touchdowns, caught 69 passes. Last year, he was limited to only 12 games, was able to rush for 619 yards and 4 touchdowns, right at 4.0 yards per carry, which was the lowest of his career. Patriots offense was not great. Limited to only 38 receptions, but did see 51 targets in those 12 games. Nominally, he's probably the best offensive player still for the Patriots, but we don't know what the 2024 Patriots are going to look like, from their offensive scheme to their quarterback to anything else. So where are you feeling Ramondre Stevenson right now?
If he's healthy, I think he's going to be the guy there. He averaged 17 touches a game last year. So we know he can catch the ball. He's got good size. If he can avoid injury and they get just reasonable quarterback play. No, they don't have a ton at wide receiver, and Hunter Henry's getting old as dirt at the tight end.
Hunter Henry's a free agent. So let me tell you who the skill position players they have on their roster. At receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton. They currently still have Kayshon Boutte, but I would suspect he'll get broomed. Demario Douglas and Kaywan Baker and TJ Luther at wide receiver. Both Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki are free agents. Their current backfield under contract: Kevin Harris, Keyshawn Vaughn, JaMychal Hasty, and Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, Ramondre's the show there.
He might be the best player on this roster. I'm going top to bottom right now. I'm sure they have a couple defensive players that would make a case for it, but he's probably the best. He's by far the best player, skill position player on offense. And I'm including quarterbacks Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. They do have the number 3 overall pick. Do you think they end up taking a quarterback? Do you think they'll trade back?
So Belichick is gone. Who did they bring in as their GM?
I don't know if they declared.
I can see based on just
I think
how
they had somebody who held the position, Elliot Wolf.
okay, so Ron Wolf's son.
Yeah.
I can see there's merit in trading back. But if we look at what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years?
Yeah.
When was the Kenny Pickett draft?
2022.
Okay.
He's done 2 years. He'll be in the next group that we look at quarterback.
So it makes sense if you believe the quarterbacks are, that the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft are dudes. If you think that, look, I'm sitting at 3, and so it doesn't matter if Caleb falls to me or Drake May or Jaden Daniels, I'm going to take whichever one is there because I think all these guys are it. Then you stay there. But there's merit to trading back. The trouble is you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you're choosing between Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell and Matt Corral and, the rest of the guys, Desmond Ridder, from the guys from that class. Mac Jones showed some potential his rookie year. He fell apart. I think he may have been wrecked by coaching. Bailey Zappi, I don't think he's it. They have to do something at quarterback. And so I think you take your shot when you've got the opportunity. So they probably take Daniels.
Yeah.
But there's merit to getting enough picks, to getting a lot of picks if your team is bad enough. And by all intents and purposes, they are bad enough.
All right. Well, Ramondre's, I think, still going to have value. I'll be curious to see what they can build around him. The next guy, interesting one, is Chuba Hubbard, who landed in Carolina, was a low-end 4th-round pick. Had probably a better rookie year than I remembered, 612 yards. Didn't do a ton, but was a change of pace guy in his second year. Last year, we thought it was going to be Miles Sanders, but in what was kind of a woeful Carolina offense, Hubbard really took over and was one of the bright spots. Career high, 238 carries, had 902 yards, 5 touchdowns, caught 39 passes for 233 yards. So now, moving into year 4, they're going to have another new coach, scheme change. They're still trying to get the best out of Bryce Young. Do you like Hubbard? Are you feeling, I think I feel probably better having him in an RB3 territory for me, but that speaks more to the position than how great I feel about Hubbard.
Yeah, it's, he caught 39 out of 44 targets last year, but he only averaged 6 yards a catch. It was practically a handoff. That doesn't mean that he can't do more with it. I just think that offense was just so bad. Dave Canales went into Tampa and made Baker Mayfield look fantastic. Can he do that with Bryce Young? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I've seen some notes linking Mike Evans or saying Mike Evans would be a great fit in Carolina. They drafted Jonathan Mingo last year, who's a big wide receiver, not as big as Evans, but a big wide receiver. They have a couple other players there. They need a lot of work still in Carolina. And they're going to say they have their guy at quarterback. That's, you're going to toe the company line. Nobody's going to come out and say anything. Miles Sanders, maybe he bounces back this year. It took him 4 years to have a good season in Philadelphia. So maybe he just needs a season or 2 to get comfortable in Carolina. And then maybe that will, rain on Chuba Hubbard's parade. I probably want Hubbard as an RB4 on my team with some upside. I would be looking maybe to actively move him. I I don't think he's special. He's an upright runner. He's got good speed, and he handles dump off passes. He isn't going to make a difference in the passing game. So he's going into year 4, and he's had an RB38, RB54, and an RB27 last season. I don't know how much higher I expect him to go than 27. Honestly, I have a. It's tough for me to make a case that he's going to be above RB27.
That's why I kind of liked him in the RB3 range, which goes all the way down to 36. Next up, we have Kenneth Gainwell, who was a 5th round pick. Hope springs eternal, it seems like always for the Eagles and their draft picks. But we have not seen a lot from Gainwell. He kind of started 2023 as their starter. That lasted a couple of games and then got displaced by DeAndre Swift. Had his best career season, and that still only amounted to 84 carries for 364 yards rushing, caught 30 passes. He has never cracked more than that. He hasn't even cracked 900 yards for his career. However, he and Lou Nichols are the only running backs under contract for the Eagles going into next season. You have to figure they're going to add somebody. To me, Gainwell is, kind of in that Michael Carter range of if I had space, I might keep him at the end of my roster, but I have no faith that he's ever going to be much more than an occasional contributor in Philly. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong at all. It feels to me like he's been in the league for 8 years.
Yes.
He's forever. Another guy that could be on that Mike Davis trajectory. Give him a couple more years and let him get some more meat on those thighs, and then he'll have a 900-yard season, and everybody will be like, oh, we got to get him for next year, and then he'll have a 300-yard season. He's a decent pass protector, so he does get on the field on 3rd down sometimes. He does have a nose for the end zone. He's scored 11 touchdowns in 49 games. We've seen them pull DeAndre Swift and put Gainwell in at the goal line. We've seen him pull Swift and put Boston Scott in. We've seen him.
Does it really matter when you have Jalen Hurts, who they put in at the goal line? I mean, that's the whole other secret thing. Philly running backs in general seem like they get kind of capped.
Yeah, Gainwell is he's an RB5 for me, RB6 maybe. That I think is going to have a couple double-digit games because he gets a touchdown and 50 yards or something.
Next one is a tough one. It's Elijah Mitchell for the San Francisco 49ers. Was a 6th round draft pick who exploded as a rookie, ended up taking over kind of the starting job. 10 starts in 11 games, had 207 carries, 963 yards, 5 touchdowns, caught 19 passes, and then a little thing called Christian McCaffrey, and some injuries happened to Mitchell. And now he hasn't had more than 75 carries in a season, hasn't even cracked 300 yards in the last 2 years. To me, he's probably one of the most valuable handcuffs in the league. But until he gets to maybe another situation, as long as McCaffrey's there, I just don't see him having value.
The hard thing with Mitchell is that we've seen McCaffrey miss substantial time, and so you want to have his handcuff if you roster him. But it can be a complete waste of a roster spot because McCaffrey is so dominating. He touches the ball so many times on the ground and in the air. But he's 28 now? Getting up there?
Yeah, he's getting a little older, but I mean, he didn't show any real signs of falling off yet.
No, but he didn't. He got injured and missed most of 2 seasons earlier. So it doesn't take a lot. When it happens, it happens. We see players fall off the cliff all the time. My issue with Mitchell is that he's a 200-pound running back. And
he's
so
27.
Even if Mitchell ends up let's say McCaffrey missed a significant time and Mitchell takes over, we've seen Mitchell get injured as well, and Jordan Mason have to take over. I like Mitchell. Like Mitchell is a guy you want to have. pair him with James Conner in the Michael Carter role. Put him there. Make him your third down back with the occasional second down opportunities. Give him 150 carries and 80 targets.
Might mean in a couple of years if he gets to go somewhere else.
Right.
I just feel like where we're at right now, he is a incredibly valuable handcuff because we know what he can do, but it's kind of
that's pretty much it.
If you're not rostering McCaffrey, you're either hoping for an injury or you're just burning a roster spot hoping he gets on the free agent market. And what if he likes staying in San Francisco and they like him and they continue to re-up? I mean, that's, I think, the other danger. The final player from this group that we're going to look at is another 6th-round pick, and that's Khalil Herbert, who went to Chicago. We saw him flash at times, paired with David Montgomery in his first 2 years. In fact, last year, in 2022, had a real good year, 129 carries, had 731 yards, 4 touchdowns. That made us pretty excited going into 2023 that he might get a chance to lead the backfield. He did have a career high in carries in 132, did start 9 games technically, was limited to 12 with injuries, but only had 611 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kind of always seemingly in a mix. The Bears still have a couple of backs under contract, including him, Roschon Johnson, who they took higher in the draft last year, and Travis Homer. Could be some substantial changes for Chicago. They have a new offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron, who was pretty run heavy in Seattle. So that would be the good news if you're holding on to Herbert. Bad news is not necessarily that he will be the focal point of that offense. I think if I have him, I'm still, I still see him, maybe low end RB3, high end RB4 value in the unknown. There's still potential to me, but it's hard to feel great about relying on him week to week going into 24 right now.
Yeah, I would have felt a lot better if Herbert had stayed healthy last season. And because when he was out, Deontay Foreman looked great. Roschon Johnson flashed. And while the OC has changed, Eberflus is there, the GM is still there. They're going to want to try to get Roschon Johnson involved in the offense.
Or another
Roschon's a better pass catcher, I think, than Herbert is. Herbert has more explosiveness. We've seen that from him. We saw it 2 years ago. That's why I was excited about his opportunities last year. If he could stay healthy all season, it would be great. He looks like he's in for a career of being a second or third back on a team. He's going to be a guy. If you have him as if you're the Bears and he's your Roschon takes off and he's your second back, you're like, that's great. If he's your third back and if somebody gets injured, he's going to step right in because he understudied with Deontay Foreman. And you see, he's a guy that's always ready. It's a shame he doesn't just get to keep a job. Going into year 4, I'm not hanging my hat on Khalil Herbert this year. We'll see what happens with the Bears. It feels like their offense is going to have to take big strides for Eberflus to keep his job. I know they've changed offensive coordinators, but it feels like Eberflus is already on the hot seat. And unfortunately, the Bears are likely looking at taking a rookie quarterback, getting rid of Justin Fields, Eberflus not getting a great season and getting canned, and then bringing in another coach who didn't draft his quarterback and is stuck with the previous regime's quarterback. Maybe it works out because Caleb Williams is better than Justin Fields. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to feel like you definitely have a path for her, but like this is probably he's going into a contract year. He'll be in the mix in Chicago, but if like as you say, if they make a wholesale change next offseason, who's to say what happens and where does he end up? It's hard for me to feel great about long-term value. And I know running back in general, it's hard to feel great about long-term value anyway. But when you talk about that 2 to 3 year window, we're now looking at rookies who've completed 3 years. So they're kind of at one of the ends of those windows, unless you think they're going to get some kind of big second contract. And that just hasn't been, that doesn't seem to have been the case anymore.
Yeah. It's yeah, he's in his last year with the Bears. Unless he has a phenomenal season, I don't see him back next year.
Well, that'll do it for us today. Whether we had a phenomenal show or not, we will be back on Friday, and we will wrap up our look at the 2021 class with pass catchers, both some receivers, notable receivers, and tight ends. The free Kyle Pitts movement is going to be in full strength on Friday, Dennis, because there's finally maybe a reason for optimism there, which we will get into. He is one of this class of 2021. But if people are looking for something to fill in their Wednesday and Thursday, you know, the UFL still a few weeks from starting. We're still a week away from the combine. What can they do?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that like and subscribe button. Go find the Fantasy Football Roundtable. It's real easy. Just click and you've done it. Give us those downloads.
Well, that'll do it for us today. We'll be back talking about pass catchers on Friday, and who knows, we might get some early news. And then next week, the combine will kick off, so we'll be able to start looking at that. And we're only a few weeks away from free agency, Dennis. The off season is coming at us fast.
It's practically over.
It's practically over. You know, that's right. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll see you on Friday.